Copy this. Big Thinking Local Climate Action.
We hear a lot about what we can do individually to reduce our carbon footprint, whether we're flying less or eating less meat. But one topic gets far less attention than it really should, and that's how we can reduce our general consumption of consumer goods, and particularly electronic consumer goods. However, it turns out that people are really very concerned about this, and it's one of the most popular measures that we'd like our government and our local authority to take action on. So, although many of us have tried and found it difficult to recycle electronic goods, there are some projects out there and some authorities out there that are actually doing some transformational things, and we're about to hear from them. I'm Amanda Carpenter.
And I'm Rick Casali, and we are your hosts for Copy This, a new podcast from Carbon Copy about big thinking local climate action. And in this episode, which is about the circular economy, we're joined by Fiona Deer, who's co-director of the Restart project, and Emma Beale, who's managing director of West London Waste Authority. Welcome, Fiona and Emma. Emma, perhaps I could start by asking you why electronic waste in particular is the fastest growing type of waste?
That's a very good question. And I think our role as waste managers means that we get to see what's actually happening. We're sort of the bellwether of society and how wasteful people are being. So we can see that electronic waste is growing. But the reasons why, I'm probably guessing as much as anybody else. It's part of the communication revolution. It's described sometimes as the new industrial revolution. And we also see, not just in electronic waste, but in other waste streams that are coming in our direction, there are deliberate strategies to get people to buy more. So there are drivers that mean that we need to buy more, to purchase more, to use more, to create more. And that sort of feeds into our desire for growth. But the flip side of that is quite often that we throw away more. So our interest then is thinking about how do we make those things last longer.
How big a problem is it, Emma? I mean, you say it's a growing element. I mean, how big is the kind of waste issue? You sit in a sort of West London Waste Authority's kind of works on behalf of 6 London councils. What sort of volumes are we talking about in your part of London and your patch?
If we add together the total amount of rubbish and recycling across all of West London in a year, it's probably as big as a tenth of that. The good news is that most electronic waste is being recycled, but the not so good thing is that sometimes that can lull us into a false sense of security that we're doing the right thing. And actually what we're doing is we're just growing this waste stream. And so we need to reuse more of it and reduce the amount of recycling that we're doing.
There's a great stat globally about e-waste, which is I think this year we're on track for 60 million tonnes of e-waste globally, which is roughly equivalent to the weight of the Great Wall of China. So I find that a great way of kind of visualising just how much electronics we're throwing away.
And that's just the waste. So if we think back into the production, the amount that's being produced every year, which is terrifying, really, isn't it, Fiona? Because not only is it a very carbon intensive process, it's actually quite a damaging process because of some of the raw materials and the minerals that go into a lot of electronic goods and a lot of those products themselves.
That's right. Electronics are very complex and they contain a lot of different types of material. A lot of them are rare. And even those that aren't so rare, an incredible amount of stuff is mined just to get to those tiny amounts of material. But yeah, the carbon emissions are also really astounding. So we did some life cycle assessments of electronics last year, and we found that in the whole life cycle of a smartphone and a laptop, 80% of the carbon emissions are produced before it even gets into your hand. So that's mining, transport, production. And so you can see that the amount of time you use it for, if you can extend that, if you can double that, it's going to make a massive difference to the carbon footprint. So there's a real carbon impact of buying more and more and more, even if you take away the waste side of things.
And it isn't just carbon, obviously, it's biodiversity loss, isn't it, as well, because of where the mining is happening and the in some cases irreversible damage that are being done to the areas that are being mined for those rare and precious minerals.
Yeah, and I mean, not to mention the kind of human rights aspects and water and everything else. Yeah.
So in the run up to COP26, we all heard over and over again the four things that government wanted us to think about and know about: coal, cars, cash and trees. And in that, there's a simplicity so that individual people can sort of work out, what do I need to do? And in our homes and in our transport, I think a lot of people understand I need to move away from fossil fuels. I need to buy renewable energy. I need to prepare for my next car to be electric or to use shared electric cars. But one of the things that we can't do, or is very difficult for us to do, is to influence how products are made in the first place. So on my desk here, sitting in front of me, talking to you, I've got a laptop, a tablet and two phones. There's my work equipment, my home equipment. And they could all have been made in a factory that's powered by a coal-fired power station, for all I know. And so we can't influence those things. And so if we can't influence or change those things, what we can do is reduce that, as Fiona's just said, reduce that impact of how many times we buy into that system by making our phone last 2-4 years longer than we did last time.
So you've both been talking about, the impact from a manufacturing point of view in terms of what's happening in factories. And yet what we're about to talk about is an initiative that you're both working on, which is called Fixing Factories. So I'd be really curious to hear from either of you as to where this initiative came from, who had the idea, what's the inspiration behind it?
So the project started, as I guess most projects do, through a set of conversations. There's a few partners involved in the project, and it sort of evolved. So it started off with we've been running restart parties for 10 years now, and they're pop-up events where people can get their electronics fixed. But it's always been an ambition to have something in a more permanent space. And a few years ago, one of the organizations that we work with quite a lot, Possible, they came up with 10 bold ideas to tackle climate change. And one of them was fixing factories, which is just a great term. So we started chatting to them about it. Meanwhile, we were talking to West London Waste Authority, and we knew that they were super keen to have something based on site. And actually, I should say, when we first visited the site of the Brent fixing factory, I was just blown away by the amount of initiatives that are happening there. There's, a massive warehouse full of bikes that are going to be salvaged. And anyway, but so that we knew they were keen to work on it. At the same time, we had been building relationships with Ready Tech Go, who started up during the pandemic to take old laptops, refurbish them, and then give them to people who were suddenly finding themselves not able to function because we moved to a really digital world. So all of these things kind of fell into place. And then at the same time, we realized there was this funding opportunity through the National Lottery Community Fund. And that's all about trying out a pilot project, figuring out how to make it work. So that's what really kind of made us get everything together and put in a funding application. And we were delighted at the end of last year to hear that we'd got the funding.
So from my perspective, we've been working on reducing waste and reuse projects for over 10 years. And we've always been very focused on what's actually in the rubbish. And I mentioned earlier that a lot of electronic waste is already recycled. And so although it was on our agenda, it probably wasn't the highest on our agenda. And so you'll hear different stories from different people in my organization, because I think a lot of people's ambitions and stories just came together at the perfect time. But my story is, at the start of the pandemic, we were all children. My son was sent home from school and had to start schooling from home. And he was able to access the equipment that we had at home, a home computer, and he had my hand-me-down phone, and it wasn't a great experience for him, but he was able to adapt and learn and find new ways of schooling and communicating with his friends using this technology that we had available. And at the same time, I was watching a news article, and this woman was being interviewed on her doorstep with 3 children, and she was explaining how they were trying to do their schooling from home on a very small phone with a cracked screen. And it just broke my heart, and it made me realize that our goals of reducing waste and increasing the length of products that we're seeing come through our waste streams, and her goal of wanting to be able to access technology so that her children could adapt and learn the way that mine had, just came together. And so it made me realize that actually it's not what's in the waste that's the most important thing, which is what we've been focusing on. It's what is the need? What's the product or the material that actually has a home to go to? Who wants it, and how do we get it to them? So that's my own individual one. But there are others in our organisation who have been working on this for a long time. So I do think that there's a number of things came together all at once.
I'm really delighted by the idea of Ready Tech Go. I mean, apart from the fact it's a great name, I love the idea that you could take something that, might seem a redundant end of life product for somebody, refurbish it and give it a whole new life for somebody who's really got a need, just like you've been describing, Emma, because that's incredibly important. And it really is the circular economy at work here, isn't it? It's actually saying this product doesn't need to go into a recycling stream. It can go back into a reuse scheme. But so much of what we do when we purchase things is we're at we're really at the mercy of the manufacturer, aren't we? And we're under that huge pressure to keep buying, and under that pressure to buy the latest upgrade, the latest, you never get away from it. You constantly get calls from people saying, upgrade your phone, all of these things. And I think that there's this, we have built-in obsolescence in a lot of the objects that we buy, not just electronics, but a lot of the things that we buy. I mean, they are designed to become out of date. So we then want the next one. How do you tackle that? Because very often you'll find that the latest package for something won't work on your phone or laptop because they want you to buy the next model up. So how do you get around the built-in obsolescence, firstly, to make those products still valuable for someone else? And how are we going to be able to tackle some of that expectation of built-in obsolescence across other things that go beyond perhaps just, phones and electronics?
Well, so just in terms of the broader issue of built-in obsolescence, another part of what we do is we campaign for a right to repair, which means that manufacturers have to make things and support them afterwards. So that support them both with spare parts, with information on how to repair things, and also software. So that's a big part of what we do, because we're aware that you can't just tackle things at the waste end. But in terms of at the fixing factory, Ready Tech Go have a kind of a set of criteria for the sorts of laptops that they can fix. But what we're keen to do is work with them and work with other projects to figure out how we can kind of push the boundaries a little bit further. So often there's a requirement that if the laptop can't support Windows 7, then you can't upgrade it. But we know that you can. There are workarounds. So if it's too old to work with something like Mac OS or Windows, you can actually use a different operating system, which is called Linux. And that, because it's kind of crowdsourced and crowd supported, it's always updated, and you can get different versions of it, some of which, if it's a really old laptop, the slightly older versions use up less power. And then there's tricks like using an SSD, a solid state drive, instead of the hard drive, and then that helps it function quicker. So we're trying to see kind of how much of this we can bring in, and then kind of turn into a bit of a process that means that we can save more laptops. But you're right. There are a lot of them that are just too old to save, and that's often because of software supports, which is ironic, because actually the older they are, the easier they are to repair from a mechanical and from a physical point of view. So we're just that's what's great about it being a pilot project. We can play around and we can try and see how much we can actually save.
The other thing that we do with citing the fixing factory at Abbey Road Recycling Centre, and there's hundreds of thousands of people who go to Abbey Road, and So just seeing it will get people to think and act differently. It will give them some confidence to exert consumer power, to ask for something different of the companies that make these things. And also the link that we have with training and skills and learning and development on site means that we're training the designers of the future, who will then be going into places of work and will be wanting to work at the places that are thinking the most progressively about this. And so that in itself creates a different kind of demand too.
I was going to say it's beyond Brent as well, isn't it? So that's what was really exciting, that there's in 2 other waste facilities in West London, there are donate boxes now for laptops. So we don't even have to come to Brent to learn about the project. You can kind of also learn about it at the other places.
Yeah, and that's wonderful. That's really important, isn't it? And that's really what Carbon Copy are trying to do, is to spread best practice. I have to ask, I'm assuming you mean the Abbey Road, and there's people with recycled laptops standing on the famous zebra crossing to help promote it. How can people be sure that when they drop that laptop in that box, that they're not giving away their personal private data? Because so much of our lives is controlled and managed on the electronic devices that we have, on our desks and in our pockets.
So we have very clear requirements that all volunteers will be trained in data wiping. There'll be so that's just a given. Nothing will happen to the laptops until the data has been cleared. There are some devices, particularly Mac ones, which we just won't, if they're not unlocked by the donor, we just won't be able to get into and wipe it, let alone do anything else. So there'll be some that we just can't get into, but those that we can, the data will be wiped.
It's a really, really important point, and it's one of the things that we'll be able to measure as a result of the whole project, because we know that there's a lot of electronic devices just being stored at home because people are worried about their data. So for us, it's quite an important thing to be measuring and making sure that we're giving people enough confidence that when they hand over their laptop, they're not handing over their data as well.
You're listening to Copy This, a podcast about working together on big thinking local climate action.
I'm really curious as to what a fixing factory looks like. And I gather that you have almost 2 visions for what this permanent place could look like. One, as we've just spoken about, at the Brent waste facility. And then I gather you're also going to open another one on Camden High Street. So maybe, Emma, if you can describe a little bit what the fixing factory actually looks like at your facility, and then maybe Fiona, what's your vision for what it would look like on a high street?
Yep, sure. We have some porta cabins on site that we use as offices, particularly during the pandemic. We needed to create a bit more space so that people could work on site, but not all in the same room. And so we've given over one of those porta cabin offices for the fixing factory. And as you'd expect on a waste site, it's pretty industrial, but it's also well signposted, and it's in a prominent place, and it just is a different way. So Fiona was very kind, and she said that when she arrived on site for the first time, she was really surprised to see, warehouse full of bicycles, and it's got that impact. But for electronics, it's sort of surprising for people that they come to a recycling centre and here is a fixing factory. And actually it epitomizes the future of our industry. So there are all these production facilities in the world making new products. And what we have to do is create production facilities that then dismantle those products in the best way possible to get them back into society.
And one of my favorite things about the Brent site is that there's this amazing e-waste sculpture of a laptop, it's massive, it's kind of taller than me, and that's part of the signage. So it's I love it. It's brilliantly eye catching. So in Camden, we're looking for the site at the moment. That will be led by our partner Possible, and that the idea is that that's on a high street. So that's where you've got footfall, you've got quite high visibility, and it will be more of a kind of community hub, because we know that it's easier for people to get to. So that will be much more kind of public facing, where there might be some repair businesses based there. There'll be workshops and restart parties, and then but again, people will be able to donate things, electronics that they don't want to use anymore, and then they can be fixed and passed on to people who need them more. So it will be a slightly different kind of mix of activities, but yeah, the same principle.
And it's really clever to be able to measure these two different things, because we're the place that people bring obsolete stuff to. So how much of it really is obsolete? How many more people can we get on board as a result of some of the publicity for what we're doing? And on the high street, that's places where people go to buy things, to purchase new stuff. So how many people can be persuaded to repair and reuse instead of purchasing new? So you get some really good different metrics out of the two projects.
And I think people do want to repair things, don't they? I mean, if you think about one of the most popular TV shows on at the moment is The Repair Shop. People absolutely love the idea that something can be brought back to life and something can be given a new lease of life for themselves or for someone else. So that desire of the kind of make, do and mend that we all thought of so much was kind of part of our kind of national psyche. Not that long ago, certainly in my parents' generation, and certainly when I was growing up, that was something that, you didn't necessarily throw stuff away, you repaired it and you kept it going. And so it's there, I think. We just need to reawaken it, don't we? And actually make it feel like a positive rather than a negative. I wonder if I can ask you, though, a little bit about, the reskilling opportunities and the growth opportunities for this, because this seems to me to be something that could be scalable quite significantly if we had enough political policy, financial will to do this. We could have a kind of fixing factory or an electronic repair place on every high street in every town across the country. Do you sense that there's an appetite for that, Fiona? And what would it take for that to happen?
Oh yeah, there's absolutely an appetite for that, and that's the dream, that we'd have this everywhere. And I suppose what it comes down to is just economics at the moment, because things once we started making things with machines, it became a lot cheaper and quicker to create new things than repair, and that's when we started shifting away from repair. But we know that there's a lot more interest now. There's a lot more environmental awareness, and repair is one of the most tangible things that you can do. There's so many things to do with climate change that you just don't really see the impact, but physically throwing something away or physically repairing it really works for people. But yeah, so again, like I said, this is a pilot project which we're developing this year. We're trying to figure out how to make it work, but absolutely the aim is to scale it up. So after this, we hope that we'll be able to get more funding to actually then to do exactly that, scale it up, try it out in new areas. I was having a conversation with somebody who runs a repair cafe up in Chesterfield the other day, and she wants to open up something on the high street, but she needs support. You need a template, you need a blueprint. So we're going to be figuring that out this year, and I doubt we will get to the point of figuring out a business case which illustrates how you can open up a self-sustaining business immediately to fix things, but it might be that you can get there after a few years. So we hope to be able to model that and make it more self-sustaining.
I think the design is the key. It's the design of the products in the first place is really important. The resources and waste strategy that the government published several years ago talks about the importance of design, of consumer knowledge, and of waste management. And so what we're doing with this project is giving government a really good case study on what can happen when you change things. I think from the ordinary person's perspective, repair and reuse is so much harder than it used to be. You have to try numerous places in order to find where and how you can get things repaired. And often it appears more expensive than throwing away and starting again. And so that's the thing that we have to challenge if we're to scale this up. It isn't more expensive. It's just who pays. And that's what we need to challenge and how we have to challenge it.
When I listen to your description, both these concepts, and I think that people have heard of repair cafes, and in my mind, I'm thinking, what are some of the differences? And I think one of the things that strikes me is, apart from the ambition that you have, is the integration of the different kinds of organizations, and that you are ambitious in going further in terms of training, skills development, etc., as being really central to the core offering. And I'm wondering, are there any other aspects if people go, well, that's, we've got a repair cafe. What is it in your blueprint of a fixing factory that you would say it's a repair cafe plus? We're doing some extra things here with this concept. What would they be?
Well, I think the most immediate difference is that the fixing factories are kind of a fixed space. So they're always there. Often repair cafes are pop-up events that are once a month. Some are once a week, but most are less frequent than that. So the idea is that there's a physical space that you can just go, which helps, I think, with getting people to think about repair as an easier thing to do. So that's different. But then, the other thing that we're doing is we're really keen to these fixing factories really benefit the local area. And so we're trying to involve people who might not naturally get involved in fixing. So we, particularly young people and people that could actually be the fixers of the future. So we are running a course alongside it with another partner called Merit, who are going to train people on how to take apart and put back together laptops and computers so that they can become fixers. And then even for those that can't go on the course, there'll be volunteering opportunities, and we'll be making links with repair businesses and potential refurbishers so that there's a bit of an employment pathway through the project. And what we really hope is that we will be kind of helping the sort of people who might be outside the traditional kind of employment and education pathways, but this could be something that they're really good at and that just could be their niche. So that's one of the most exciting things. We're working with local partners to try and learn from them how we can do that best.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. It's about the supply chain. The waste comes at us, no matter what. It just keeps coming. But people want to do the right thing with it. And so that waste can be used to give people opportunities that they wouldn't otherwise have. It can be used for training and learning. If the people who are training and learning might damage the goods in the process of learning, there's no harm done. It was going to be thrown away. It can be used for people to fix their own goods. And then there are so many different ways in which it can benefit that local community. It's quite difficult to just rattle them off because it just can go in so many different directions all at once. And what we expect to happen is that things we haven't thought of will be brought to us as ideas, and we'll be asked, why aren't you doing this? Why can't you do that? How about, something else? And that's when the community is entirely engaged in what we're doing. And actually they're then taking these valuable materials and products and using it for their good. So what we do is we measure social value, and we're doing that on a number of projects. And it just gives us an insight into those benefits that aren't within our organization, but that are as a result of the things that we're doing.
And Emma, I think that's a great point to finish on, which is, I think we need to find ways to encourage everyone to repair where they can and to make it easier. Make it easier in terms of the products themselves, make it easier in terms of the places to find, to go to, the training, so that I can then do some of these things myself. There's so many elements that you're bringing together in this concept. I think it's absolutely fantastic. And also what I take away as something really exciting is that from the get-go, you have a vision of this is a blueprint. This is something that you wish to roll out and for many more people to copy a fixing factory where they are. And that for me is a very exciting opportunity for so many more people. And so I want to thank you both, Emma and Fiona, for what you're doing, for sharing this awesome initiative with us. And I wish you all the best and success.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, I'd absolutely echo that. And you're absolutely right, Rick. I mean, we repair because we care. And I think that's just, what a shining example of a project for everyone to copy. So thanks both for being with us.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
For more information about today's episode, check out carboncopy.eco/copythis. Join in the conversation by following us on Twitter and using the hashtag #CopyThisPod. Until next time,